Now, let's get into the third subnote for this long explanatory note. And this is getting back to the topic of creationism versus evolution of the subnote called, which claims that we all come from monkeys. Now, I'm not trying to start a fight with that statement, nor am I considering such believers to be stupid. And I also know that the issue is really deeper than to just throw in a simple statement like that, though the bottom line of that belief, it still boils down to it. Now, I feel that there are extremely smart people who believe in macro evolution, but I feel that such beliefs to be an error. Friends, as long as any of us are in flesh, we can certainly be wrong at times. Again, I talk about this at the beginning of every one of my books and an article I put up there called An Important Message from the Author, about how anybody can be wrong, including myself. That's why we have to study to show ourselves approved. I'm also aware that many Christians believe in harmony of both macro evolutional science, and I'm going to talk about macro evolution in a moment, apparently, because it says here I got a fourth subnote coming up. Let me reread this. I'm also aware that many Christians believe in a harmony of both macro evolutional science and the Bible. This belief, I think, is also an error. But of course, this is not the book to get into such discussions, in detail. But I've already talked about it. I don't think I talk about it here because this is an older book. I get in a little bit more detail in my book on Satan, the devil, and hell, in an explanatory note for chapter 1. I get in a lot more detail about the creation versus evolution debate, and I think I also talk about it in more detail in my book In the Beginning. It was spiritual from the very start. I think that's the other book I talk about it. And I think both of those books were written after this one. So I was preparing to do a little bit more later, and I already did. Anyways, though I believe the best argument against such a notion, again, that there can be an agreement and harmony between macroevolutional science and the Bible, has been forwarded by a Christian apologetic named Philip E. Johnson, that is, against that notion. In his wonderful and easy to understand book called An Easy to Understand Guide for Defeating Darwinism by Opening Minds, InterVarsity Press, 1997. I completely recommend that book. I think I read it twice already. Great surmise in there. Anyway, as of the moment that I am writing this paragraph, this was April the 10th, 2019 that I was writing this paragraph. That's quite a while back. I have found several copies at abebooks.com for as low as $4.50. That'll be a little bit more by now, which price includes shipping. If you're wanting a good discussion on this topic, you do yourself a favor by ordering a copy of that book. All right, now let's get into that fourth subnote to talk about macroevolutional science. When discussing or considering evolution, you have to take into consideration, and you'll do yourself a favor by doing so, that there's a big difference between microevolution and macroevolution. If you simply say to people who hold such beliefs that there's no evolution, they'll think you a moron and an uneducated oaf, for it's now turned into a words game. So what's the difference then? Microevolution tells us that there are changes in and on the earth over time, which is actually true, as I'm going to explain in a moment. But macroevolution says that there are changes within species themselves. And I use that word species very lightly because that term, I may or may not get into that term in this book. I might. Like I said, it's been a while since I've read this, but like I also said, I get into about the species word in those other two books that I've already mentioned. So anyway, let's continue. Where was I? Such as a human had evolved from a type of a long ago extinct ape, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years ago, however long they say it is. Now that's where proof is really lacking, okay? But evolutionist educators try to have you buy into macroevolution because they can actually prove microevolution. You see what I'm saying? It's the old bait and switch game. But even so, what's microevolution boiled down to anyway, okay? Well, you can have changes within here we go, species, changes within a species, such as you can get a little dog from a bigger dog, which really, the Bible calls them kinds. It's a lot easier to explain what a kind is. You got dog kinds, cat kinds, elephant kinds. It puts it into an easier understand bracket. The Bible does us that favor. Microevolution, you can get a bigger dog you can get a smaller dog from a bigger dog. You can get a variety of different kinds of dogs from other kinds of dogs. They're the same kind, not species. You might even get a wolf from a dog. But that's just it. There's still changes with the same kind of animal. And that kind of science can actually be observable, demonstratable, and provable, which is what we call empirical science or empirical evidence, which Wikipedia says is the information received by means of the senses, particularly by observation and documentation of patterns and behavior through actual experimentation. But what is not observable nor empirical is that you can get one kind of an animal from a completely different kind of an animal. Let's be honest about this. Now, that's where we start having problems with evolution. For example, you'll never be able to get a deer to mate with a jackrabbit and get a jackalope. It just simply doesn't happen. And yet, we're all supposed to buy into it because microevolution can be observed, okay? By the way, I purposely put into quotations, okay, here we go, both the words species and kind, because I do not believe there to be such a thing as a species, okay? Like I said, I spoke about this a second ago. That is, as the term is so forwarded by evolutional scientists, which wording is adopted by them to examine macroevolution. And here it says I got a fifth subnote to explain the difference between species and kind. So I do get into it a little bit here. Okay, good. So let's go to Genesis 1:21 through 25. God created great whales, every living creature that moves, which the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and every winged fowl after his kind, not species. God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful, multiply, fill the waters, let the fowl multiply in the earth. And the evening and the morning were the fifth day. God said, let the earth bring forth living creature after his kind, cattle, creeping thing, beast of the earth, after his kind. See, not one beast from a completely different kind of a beast. And it was so. God made the beast of the earth after his kind, cattle after their kind, see, cattle kind, and everything that creeps upon the earth after his kind, their own kind. God saw that it was good. And yet, it never said that a different kind would come from another different kind. I already said that during the quote. And again, it cannot be proved by any scientific observations, nor can it ever be empirical science. But all the year long, we can watch a variety, microevolution, of animals breed with each other who are of the same kind as they are. But what exactly is a kind, one may ask? Well, it's a lot simpler to answer than what a species is, that's for sure. Again, here I say there's a dog kind, horse kind, cat kind, elephant kinds, etc. In other words, animals who can successfully breed with one another are the same kind. Okay? That's a very easy explanation. For more information on this controversial debate, please go to creationscience.com/online book for the official website and the entire book online free by Dr. Walt Brown. He used to work for NASA. This guy's got all your credentials. People want scientists with credentials. He's got them all. But especially beginning on this page called creationscience.com/online book/life sciences. which deals exclusively with micro and macro evolution and of their differences. Now, we go to our fifth subnote, called Which Wording is Adopted by Them to Examine Macroevolution, that is, species. No, evolutionists did not invent the word species, but they certainly adopted it instead of the word kind. However, and ironically, the original use of the word and the original meaning actually did mean kind after all. etymonline.com, word species. That's the website address, by the way. Late 14th century as a classification in logic from Latin species, a particular sort, kind, or type. That's what it meant. Opposed to genus, which word some scientists may use instead of species, okay? Since it may get more specific for them and their thinking and their observations. Originally, a sight, a look, a view, appearance, hence also a spectacle, mental appearance, an idea, a notion, a look, a pretext, a resemblance, a show or display, typically in passive senses. In late Latin, a special case, related to specter, to look at, to see, behold, from pi root spec, to observe. From 1550s as appearance, outward form. From the 1560s as a distinct class of something based on common characteristics, okay? Their own kinds, like we talked about. Biological sense is from circa 1600. The word endangered species first attested in 1964. Be that it as it may, I guess different people will observe this word, species, as they do science with their own goggles, okay? But is that wrong for them particularly to do? Is it particularly wrong? That is, to see things how you would like to see them, and that is whether it's right or wrong? No, it's not really wrong to see it that way. But what is wrong is enforcing other people to believe them with you. That's what's wrong. You're going to find the guilty parties in all facets of life, in business world, in science, in entertainment, in education, etc., and even, God forbid, in religion. Let's be honest, okay?